Ivory Coast is pulling out all the stops to strengthen ties with South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has been made an honorary chief in that country. Today he will be presented with the honorary citizenship of the Autonomous District of Abijan. Newzroom Afrika's senior reporter Tumaole joins us live from the Ivory Coast. Bonjour, monsieur. Talk to us, how is the trip coming along?
Bonjour. Indeed, the trip is coming along very smoothly. In fact, the Ivory Coast leg here in Abidjan was quite an eventful affair, with the Ivorians rolling out the red carpet for President Cyril Ramaphosa. In fact, more than the red carpet, he has been made an honorary chief here in Abidjan, the capital. He basically went to an area where the founding president of the Ivory Coast, that would be, of course, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, who was the Ivorians' long-standing and long-ruling president. And he went to the hall where Félix Houphouët-Boigny was, of course, coming from in terms of his origins. And their traditional leadership came through and bestowed upon him a chieftainship. So a clearly moved, a clearly emotional President Cyril Ramaphosa accepting that and saying that he feels honored. Now, the reason this has happened, of course, President Alassane Ouattara making some comments later on at a gala dinner that was held in honor of the South African president, saying that the Ivory Coast has rolled out the carpet because South Africa and the Ivory Coast have very close bilateral ties. Now, as far as those bilateral and diplomatic ties, there were several agreements that have been reached and signed. President Ramaphosa is accompanied by several senior cabinet ministers. This will be ministers in the portfolios of course, women and children, social development, economy. This would be, and transport as well. These agreements will then tie in South Africa with the Ivory Coast in terms of skills transfer, in terms of bilaterals, and in terms of engaging to see how these countries can basically benefit from each other's economies. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa, upon speaking to the Ivory Coast, saying that indeed he has a very strong link to the Ivory Coast because he sees it as one of the key economies. Now, he's on a tour of the West African countries. Just a few days ago, he was in Nigeria, and from here he will be going on to Ghana. And he wants to make sure that this corridor is one of the key elements in intra-Africa trade to open up this economy and to ensure that South African businesses, which already have a footprint in the area, continue to basically deepen their ties, and that those hiccups that have been a hindrance in the past in terms of opening up this multi-trillion-dollar economy or corridor to intra-Africa trade and break the foothold of Europe in terms of the raw materials beneficiation and skills transfer is then achieved. So basically this was something of a ceremonial event, and President Ramaphosa saying that indeed he feels honored to have been bestowed this honor, and saying that he will then deepen those ties between the countries, which is why he brought the ministers along. Of course, the deals being signed, just memoranda of understanding at this stage, then at the high level of a bilateral stage, the ministers from both countries will then have to thresh out exactly how these deals will work out. The time frames are also something very interesting. Some of the deals that have been signed, or the agreements or memorandum of understanding, really, their time frames are going for something including 2 to 5 years. However, with the ministers then engaging with each other from both sides, these deals and these bilateral agreements can then have a formalization that will then allow them to have a lifespan that will ensure that more than ceremony, they are actually very practical deals that will help both economies.
Now, as I say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. How quickly do we expect some of these agreements to kick in, and which industries, Tumaole, are likely to benefit up front?
Well, as far as how quickly the deals are set to kick in, this is where the ministers will then have to sit with each other and see exactly what these deals mean in a practical sense in terms of, operationally, how do they then find expression? Because some of these deals also involve local businessmen here in Ivory Coast and businesses in South Africa. So in terms of the lifespan of the deals, for now, some of them are ranging between 2 to 5 years, about 2 to 3 years. This is the time frames with which the ministers from both sides will then have to look at the legislative side of things, the nuts and bolts, if you will, which will then give effect and give meaning to these deals. So this is something that is of great excitement and something that President Cyril Ramaphosa himself says he'll be watching very closely to ensure that apart from the bilaterals and apart from the memoranda of understanding at this stage, which is where the deals are, that they effectively become something that is contributing to the economy as envisaged in a practical sense. Now, in terms of what will happen and what are the most important aspects of it, I think also the cultural exchange is something that he was very, very firm and very emphatic about, saying that both countries will also engage in cultural exchange between the youth specifically. Both countries have got a very large youth population, and of course high unemployment in both regions is a serious challenge. So some of these deals are geared at skills transfer, geared at involving the youth specifically from both ministries in South Africa that deals with women and youth, and also here in the Ivory Coast. And much of that slice of that pie, once it is formalized and ratified, will go to youth development and youth employment, with a view of developing these economies and making sure that the young people get a stake as well. Now, the companies involved, he is accompanied by a delegation of very many companies which already have a footprint here in the Ivory Coast. We'll be looking at large retail chains, including, of course, ShopRite Group, and then, of course, we will also be looking at telecommunication companies as well. So that's where it stands from there. And from there, it's back to you in the studio.
Our senior reporter Mohlaoli in Abijan in the Ivory Coast, where he's part of the contingent travelling with President Cyril Ramaphosa as he looks to sign some bilateral agreements with a number of countries in West Africa. And we can tell you that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been made an honorary chief in that country.